Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
And welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen, as I briskly move into my chair so that we can entertain you tonight with another riveting episode of Cowboy Logic Radio. Back to you, Donna.
You were almost tardy there for a second, running to the mic.
Only counts in hand grenades and whatever else.
Horseshoes.
That's true. I was on time. I was here. I made it in time.
Yes, you did.
Our valued and beloved listeners were able to hear the intro of this show because I did make it.
I would venture to say you were standing, weren't you?
I was standing.
Yes.
Because I don't kneel.
Right, exactly.
I kneel for the cross. I stand for the flag.
Exactly.
I kneel for the cross. I stand for the flag.
Yes. I'm just looking at your face. It's so bizarre.
I am very serious about what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, and I know
absolutely.
you know I am.
Absolutely, because, well, it's right after Memorial Day, the unofficial start of summer, because summer, of course, doesn't start till later on, but we honor those who made our lives possible.
With the ultimate sacrifice.
The ultimate sacrifice.
I got to tell you something, Donna. Over the weekend, I probably got a half a dozen text messages from friends that were wishing me a happy Memorial Day. And this is anything but a happy weekend.
Yeah, it's not something...
And I know, it was
what
a
they
mistake
mean.
on their part. But you know how I responded?
What?
I responded back with the picture that I've got on my Facebook page of a little kid dressed up in a Marine uniform.
Oh, that's such a heart-wrenching
leaning over his
picture.
father's tombstone. And I sent back and I said, remembering Memorial Day.
We want to say hi to the Carry the Load folks who wound up down in Dallas, starting in our buses, actually, from the East and the West Coast, walking.
West Point, New York is where the East Coast tour started at the beginning of May. Mm-hmm. And the West Coast tour started in Seattle.
Raising money
for the families of fallen military, fire, and police. And we have been working with Carry the Load. You can find this organization, ladies and gentlemen, at carrythelode.org.
I think they've raised, $7 million?
They may be over $7 million this year. But we have been with them for the past 5 years. It is an absolute honor. We do discount our buses to these folks because we believe in what they're doing, and we value the partnership that Star Coaches has with Carry the Load.
And it's not too late to donate.
No, you can donate year-round. All you got to do is go to carrythelode.org, and you've got all kinds of instructions of how you can donate both money and time. Mm-hmm. And I was thrilled. We got a text message on Monday, actually, with a photograph of one of our East Coast drivers, a Marine by the name of Joe Kraft, and our dear friend, Sydney Powell, who lives in Dallas, Texas, and went down to Revachon Park, both on Sunday and Monday, and hooked up with the Carry the Load guys. And we're going to have Sydney on later on.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to Sydney in the show.
Yep.
Author of Licensed to Lie, Exposing the Corruption in the Department of Justice. What a prophetic book that is.
Donna, last week, and when I got home from work, I rewound the Mark Levin show from Thursday, I believe it was, Wednesday or Thursday. Mm-hmm. And I said, you got to listen to this.
It was pretty
Levin went off the chain with regard to the National Football League, the new policy that they've got against kneeling during the national
Which is
anthem.
why I said you were standing earlier to bring it back around.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I stand for the flag. I kneel for the cross. Mm-hmm. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is a brilliant enough piece that we're going to take up a few minutes of this first segment where we normally read headlines, and we're going to let you, in case you missed the Mark Levin rant. He started off talking about Nancy Pelosi. He ended with a Minnesota punter by the name of Chris Not Cluey. And
Chris Cluey.
Yeah.
who's clueless.
Yeah.
But this is why Levin is the great one.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, she wanted to comment on the NFL anthem rule, too. And who better than Chris Cuomo and Nancy Pelosi? Together, an IQ of -12. Cut 11, go.
Are you okay with this rule change by the NFL?
And by the way, who cares if she is or isn't? Are you okay with the rule change by the NFL? Okay, go ahead.
Are you okay with this rule change by the NFL?
I would be more okay with it if they had consulted with the players. This was...
Whoa, where is it? What, they got clapping seals there? What's this? Oh, a CNN town hall. Consult with the players. It's the players, some of them, not all of them, who are out of control. Why would you consult with the players? The owners set the rules through the league, and the players follow the rules. That's how it works. That's how it works where I work. That's how it works where most of you work. You don't get to take knees in your place of work. Hey, I'm taking a knee. Why? Because of social injustice. Go ahead.
I don't think the players agreed to this. This is the owners. And by the way, it's the owners who would be fined.
All right, so I want all the people who work for Nancy Pelosi to take a knee every morning. Just take a knee. And say, I'm taking a knee because of social injustice. Take a knee. Everybody on Capitol Hill, take a knee. I don't believe it. Look, America sucks. There's social injustice. We hate the cop. Take a knee. Just take a knee. And if they want to fix it up there on Capitol Hill, they need to consult with you, you see. They need to negotiate with you. The knee takers. Go ahead.
National anthem. I mentioned earlier to Jesus that I'm from Baltimore. That's where it was written during the War of 1812. So I'm very possessive of it.
Well, why don't you sing it? Let's see if you know the words. Why don't you sing it? Because you don't know the words. You're a nitwit. Go ahead.
We should change the national anthem. No, I'm from Baltimore. I love the national anthem, and I love the flag.
Nobody cares if you love the national anthem. There's not a single football fan who cares about you in the least. And I hate to say it, we don't care what the players think. I know it's awful to say. We do not care. We don't care what their view of politics is. Play football. Go ahead.
Our homes are all decorated with flags. It's such a beautiful thing.
Which flag? Which country? I can't believe that her home is decorated with flags, unless it's like flags of Cuba, North Korea, her new friends, Syria. Remember her friend over there, Assad's old man? Oh, yes, I remember. Maybe the Palestinian flags like they had at the Democrat convention? Oh, yes. She have an American flag in her home? Honestly, I'd be shocked. Go ahead.
And I love the First Amendment. And I'll just leave it at that.
The First Amendment has nothing to do with it. And I'll just leave it at that. My dentures are getting loose here. One more time, even for the Speaker of the House, who's been there for 412 years and takes an oath every time she's elected to uphold and faithfully execute the Constitution of the United States. The First Amendment applies to the protection of the individual and groups against the government. The NFL is not the government. It's not a First Amendment issue. I don't know how many dunderhead sportscasters keep talking about the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with any amendment. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. The NFL's not the government. It's a private entity. It's not your First Amendment right to take a knee at a football game during the national anthem. Your ass can be fired. It's not the government. I don't know how many more times I have to say this. Then we have Chris Cluey. Who the hell's Chris Cluey? Former Vikings punter. Well, I don't know about you, but when I want to know about football, I go to a former Vikings punter who's seeking attention. And so he was on CNN yesterday. I think the next thing they're going to do is look for the former Vikings water boy, or the guy who's in charge of the footballs, or the guy who puts the big fans there during the summer so the players don't get too hot. That guy. Or that hands out the Gatorade. We want to hear from all of them. Chris Cluey, who doesn't have a Cluey. Cut 12, go.
I think that in this situation, the players really have a choice to make, and that's, are they going to stick together or are they going to let the owners win?
So you see, ladies and gentlemen, stick together or let the owners win. It's not about patriotism, the national anthem, how you're offending veterans, active duty military personnel, and their families and the American people. No. It's the players versus the owners. Well, guess what? I'm siding with the owners. What do you think of that? Because the owners aren't taking a knee. Some of you jerks are taking a knee. What do you think of that, pal? Punter. Not even a punter. Oh, he was a punter. Cluey, with no Cluey whatsoever. Go ahead.
The upcoming CBA is already poised to be one of the most contentious in NFL history.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect opportunity for the players to make a statement to the owners saying,
the players need to make a statement to the owners. The well-paid players need to make a statement to the owners. You don't get to tell us what to do on the field. We get to tell you what to do. We get to give the middle finger to the fans in this country, except we do it by taking a knee. We control the field. Not the owners, not the league, not the refs. We do. Who is this idiot? This no cluey. Go ahead.
We are going to band together. We are going to work together. And we're not going to follow these rules that are frankly un-American.
And how are they un-American, genius? You behave yourself in the workplace? What's un-American about that? You dimwit. Go ahead.
You know, if all the players decide, hey, none of us are going to take the field, we are all going to...
You know what? I dare you to do it. I dare you to do it. Go on strike. Get off the field. Go ahead and do it, pal. Particularly you guys who are retired, really tough guys. Mr. Punter. Go ahead. Get off the field. Have a strike. See how the American people react to that. Strike over the national anthem and your right to take a knee. I want to see it. Go ahead and do it. You don't scare us, you moron. Go ahead and strike. Show us how unpatriotic you are. I got no problem with that whatsoever. Stay in the damn locker room and don't come out. We'll watch college sports. We'll play sports ourselves. The hell, you're going to hold a gun to the head of the American people? This isn't even a matter of the players' union versus the owners. It's the player union versus the American people and the football fans, who are some of the most patriotic people in the country. You jerk, Cluey. Go ahead. This is a guy who made a fortune and has a pension kicking a damn football over the place. Now he thinks he's Patrick Henry. Go ahead.
Societal standpoint, but it's also good from a player's bargaining standpoint.
Oh, well, that's what we're all about. You players certainly don't get paid enough. You want to shake down the fans some more? See, the owners don't pay the players, ladies and gentlemen. You do. When you buy a $12 hot dog or an $8 soda or a $14 beer or $20 to park. Why do you think those prices are so high? To pay schmucks like no Cluey, that's why. What else does this idiot have to say? Cut 13, go.
I think it's very, very important that we as a nation stop conflating the police with the military.
Nobody's conflating the police with the military. We know the difference between the police and the military, no Cluey. We really do. And we respect and support both. Go ahead.
Our military is there to protect us from foreign threats.
Let's stop. Wow. No wonder he was a punter. He's so smart. Our military is there to protect us from foreign threats. What else? Go ahead.
Are doing a job that generally requires them to kill people.
Generally requires them to kill people? You know, the vast majority of people in the military have never killed anybody. So we have a low IQ, former punter with the perfect name, Cluey, a.k.a. No Cluey, telling us about our military. Our military is there to kill people. Well, if necessary, yes, but it's there to protect us. That's what it's there for, no Cluey. Now, what about our police? Can't wait for this one. Go ahead.
Police are civil servants designed to uphold justice. That's a completely different job than our
No,
military.
they're not designed to uphold justice. That's what the court system does. The police are there to enforce the law, not to mete out justice, to enforce the law. For instance, if a football player's in a bar and he starts a brawl and he punches somebody, he's to be arrested, thrown in jail, and then the justice system kicks in. Understand? No, you don't understand, no Cluey. Go ahead.
And the fact that we're starting to bring those two closer and closer together, that's what authoritarianism is. That's
Who
what,
is bringing those two closer and closer together, Schmo? The police and the military? Who is this idiot? Seriously. I never even heard of him before. Minnesota. What do you got here? Go ahead.
Is making those two the same thing, making your military your police. And so
our military are not our police, and our police are not the military. This is why the American people can't stand you and people like you. Because now you're trying to put down the police to suggest they're like the military because they want to kill people. Isn't that what he's saying, Mr. Producer? You jackass. Go ahead.
We need to be aware as a country, not just NFL players, but everyone, that the fact that we are going further and further down this path is a very, very dangerous path to be treading.
Yes, it's a very, very dangerous path that we're going down. Very dangerous path that we're going down. The police are becoming like the military. And, of course, the military, it requires them generally to kill people. And the more they get together and the more they're the same, it's very, very authoritarian. Now, the next time you hear some moron sportscaster tell you, this isn't an attack on the military, it's not an attack on the police, it's about social injustice, remember what Mr. Chris No Cluey, former Vikings punter, had to say. It's all about the military, it's all about the police, and it's all about trashing the country.
Mark Levin, the great one, from last week sometime, I think it was the 23rd of May, 24th of May, And I also noticed that Chris No Cluey had a response to that.
Oh, did he?
On a progressive talk radio show. I'm sure that was lovely.
I'm sure he displayed his 2 IQ.
Didn't he sound like a Valley girl when he was talking?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Like the police, they're like, acting more like the military. And
they're acting like well-paid thugs is what they're doing right now. Hey, remember in 2012, the NFL had an issue with Tim Tebow kneeling for each game to pray?
Yeah, I remember that all too well.
How about they fined Brandon Marshall for wearing green cleats to raise awareness for people with mental health disorders? That was in 2013. In 2014, Robert Griffin III, RG3, entered a post-game press conference wearing a shirt that said, "No Jesus, no peace." That's KNOW. No Jesus, no peace. But was forced to turn it inside out. In 2015, D'Angelo Williams was fined for wearing Find the Cure eye black for breast cancer awareness. In 2015, William Gay was fined for wearing purple cleats to raise awareness for domestic violence. Not that the NFL has domestic violence problem or anything.
That's the source of a lot of it.
And in 2016, it prevented the Dallas Cowboys from wearing a decal on their helmet to honor 5 Dallas police officers killed in the line of duty, basically ambushed.
Appalling.
2016, they threatened to fine players who wanted to wear cleats to commemorate the 15th anniversary of 9/11. So tell me again how the NFL supports free speech and expression. All of a sudden, they have no problem with this. It's really
excellent.
pitiful.
I wasn't ready for you to lay that on me, Donna.
I have a bunch of things people send me that I keep on a little, what do you call this thing?
That's a music stand.
Music stand where you
put all your notes that won't fit on your desk.
Yes. And Keith Crosby, who basically is somebody
I used to like that band a lot.
Oh, stop.
Except they were like, I was
David
too young
Crosby.
to like them.
No, Keith Crosby, a good friend of Cowboy Logic Radio. We met him a few times with the Trump bus when we were out campaigning here in Georgia. Sends me some great stuff, and I'm going to read something that he sent also. Sent me that NFL thing, by the way, and something I want to read a little later on to commemorate our great military heroes this day after Memorial Day.
Well, speaking of great military heroes, Private First Class Bradley Chelsea Manning tweeted a suicide note and a picture of herself on a ledge of a tall building. Okay?
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Now, if you don't remember who Bradley Chelsea Manning is and was, Chelsea Manning, or Bradley Manning, I guess at the time, this was before he changed from a guy to a girl, stole 251,000 State Department documents. He stole them out on a CD that was labeled Lady Gaga. Now, Manning was bitter after a breakup with his boyfriend. And Obama commuted Chelsea Manning and the sentence that was imposed on Shim in January of 2017, right before Obama left office. Now,
she's running for office now, right?
Democratic senatorial candidate. That's what Miss Manning is.
Ms.
Yeah. Chelsea tweeted, "I'm sorry. I tried. I'm sorry I let you all down. I'm not really cut out for this world. I tried adapting to this world out here, but I failed you. I couldn't do this anymore. I can take people I don't know hating me, but not my own friends. I tried, and I'm sorry about my failure."
Okay. I'll tell you what this is. This is coming. This is the failure. This is the snowflakes. This is the snowflakes coming of age. They can't deal with failure. They can't deal with any setbacks.
This is
terrible.
A terribly troubled individual that Barack Obama seemed to think it would be appropriate to commute him's
I'm sorry.
sentence.
At the risk of sounding politically incorrect, if you have a sex change operation, you're troubled. I'm sorry. You've got issues that need to be looked at. And who was it that said...
Oh, by the way, the picture of him standing on the ledge above the, it looked like it was maybe 8 stories up. He was wearing a pink robe, but he did have his toenails painted.
Oh, gosh. I don't even do that. I can't stand doing that. Hey, getting back to this NFL thing, meanwhile, at a softball championship game for a high school championship, It was held at Fresno State. This is, of course, the campus where that freak of nature professor teaches that attacked Barbara Bush right after she died. Well, they were having a softball championship game. The announcer says, hey, we're not going to play the national anthem. So what happened?
It
the
didn't
crowd
go over
booed.
very well.
They stood up and they sang the national anthem.
A cappella.
There you go. Players stopped even their pregame warm-ups, faced the flag while the anthem was being sung. So there.
People aren't into this, Donna.
No.
The vast majority of the American people are very pro-American. They're pro-American exceptionalism. They are pro our military. They are pro our law enforcement. And they are pro the American flag. And this is offensive, and it's not going to end well for those people that are fighting against it.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with making America great again. So the aforementioned Keith Crosby sends me these great little snippets that I print out, and I have them sitting here on my music stand to my left. And this is a great one, given the day after Memorial Day. It happened every Friday evening, almost without fail, when the sun resembled a giant orange and was starting to dip into the blue ocean. Old Ed came strolling along the beach to his favorite pier. Clutched in his bony hand was a bucket of shrimp. Ed walks out to the end of the pier, where it seems almost that he has the world to himself. The glow of the sun is a golden bronze now. Everybody's gone except for a few joggers on the beach, and standing out on the end of the pier, Ed is alone with his thoughts and his bucket of shrimp. Before long, however, he's no longer alone, because up in the sky 1,000 white dots come screeching and squawking, winging their way toward that lanky frame standing there at the end of the pier. Obviously, seagulls. Before long, dozens of seagulls have enveloped him, their wings fluttering and flapping wildly. Ed stands there tossing shrimp to the hungry birds, and as he does, if you listen closely, you can hear him say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." In a few short minutes, the bucket is empty, but Ed doesn't leave. He stands there lost in his thoughts. When he finally turns around and begins to walk back toward the beach, a few of the birds hop along the pier with him until he gets to the stairs, and then they too fly away. Ed quietly makes his way down to the end of the beach and on home. So if you're sitting there, if you're an onlooker, you probably just thought it's just another old codger lost in his own weird world, feeding the seagulls with a bucket of shrimp. To the onlooker, rituals can look either very strange or very empty. They can seem altogether unimportant, maybe even a lot of nonsense. Old folks often do kind of strange things. This guy's name, though, was Eddie Rickenbacker. He was a famous hero in World War II and World War I. In one of his flying missions across the Pacific, he and his 7-member crew went down. Miraculously, they all survived. They crawled out of their plane, they climbed onto a life raft, and Captain Rickenbacker and his men were pretty much starving by the 8th day. Their rations ran out, no food, no water. All of a sudden, as they came adrift, that afternoon they had a simple devotional service and prayed for a miracle. Eddie leaned back, pulled his military cap over his nose, and all he could hear was the slap of the waves against the raft. Suddenly, Eddie felt something land on the top of his cap. It was a seagull. Old Ed would later describe how he sat perfectly still, planning his next move. With a flash of his hand and a squawk from the gull, he managed to grab it and wring his neck. He tore the feathers off. He and his starving crew made a meal of it. They used the guts to catch fish for bait. They used the guts for bait, which gave them food and more bait. And they were rescued some 24 days later. Eddie Rickenbacker lived many years beyond that ordeal. He never forgot the sacrifice of that life-saving seagull, and Eddie Rickenbacker went on to be the founder of Eastern Airlines. How about that?
Wow.
And that, folks, is why you stand for the national anthem. It's not why you kneel. That's all I can say.
That's a good one to end on, Donna Fiducia. Who do we have coming up tonight?
We will be speaking to Jack CASHILL. He is the author of a book about TWA Flight 800. And in American Thinker, he equates this now with the Mueller investigation. Very interesting. I was out there that morning, and we have a lot to talk about with TWA Flight 800. Then we'll be talking to Gordon Chang about North Korea, and Sidney Powell, the aforementioned Sidney Powell, author of License to Lie, Exposing the Corruption in the Department of Justice. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Welcome to the Chronicles of Lower Education with your host, the Fed Up Professor. This week, a call to arms. In his book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, University of Toronto professor and clinical psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson commits the far leftists' most unforgivable crime. He asserts, our categories are far older than our species. Our most basic category is that of sex, male and female. I know, this isn't exactly news to us, but the idea of binary absolutes is verboten in today's universities where humanities programs are dedicated to subverting and dissolving the very categories that order our lives and allow us to understand and navigate an otherwise chaotic existence. Fundamentally, leftist academics are dedicated to destroying our Western culture by spreading chaos. Consider these instructions from the How to Be an Ally document that's posted on universities' gender studies websites. It's an act of oppression to automatically assume that people identify as the sex they were assigned at birth. Reduce toxic homophobia. Don't allow others to tell offensive LGBTQ jokes in your presence. Take your children or siblings to see movies by and about LGBTQ individuals. Educate them about families that have two moms or two dads. Demand that your political representatives support legislation that favors LGBTQ people. These guidelines go on and on. See, if they persuade us to accept that the most basic human category is merely socially constructed gender assignment, they can upend all of the frames of reference that help us maintain order in our society, which they despise. We have to be vigilant about our kids' exposure to this re-education and raise holy hell whenever we see it. Until next week, I remain the fed up and female professor.
This is Don NEUEN, co-host of the Drive Time Sit Rep. Join me as I call in to my Intel analyst, Denise Simon, for my daily situation report, or Sit Rep, the Drive Time Sit Rep. Check talkamericaradio.us for more information and show times.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN. And our very special guest this half hour is a guy who wrote a book about something that when I did reporting years ago in New York City really hit home to me. His name is Jack CASHILL, and the book title is TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy. And Jack, this book came out, a couple years ago, I think now, and we're at the 22 years ago, and this July is when that shoot down happened. And notice I called it a shoot down of a 747.
Exactly.
Now,
the book came out in July '96 for the 20th anniversary, and you were right; it was a shoot down. That's not even debatable.
No,
there's a vague element of debate as to who fired the missiles, but there is no debate that missiles were fired and they brought the plane down.
Absolutely. I should tell everybody that Jack CASHILL can be read in American Thinker and WorldNet Daily. And again, the book is TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy. And the reason why I want to have you on right now, Jack, is your latest American Thinker article that you wrote basically ties this whole TWA Flight 800 crash to the Russia conspiracy. How the FBI, the CIA, and the New York Times collaborated to sway the '96 election for Bill Clinton and then this past election for Hillary Clinton. Can you explain here?
Yeah, what I was intrigued by was the comparisons to Watergate. But Watergate's not a parallel. It's not real parallel because the media and Watergate were actively trying to get at the truth. And there was a truth there, and Nixon had left himself vulnerable, and we know that the whole thing was skewed, but there was a truth there. In 1996, what happened is that the various elements of the U.S. government, and this was orchestrated out of the White House, it could only have been orchestrated out of the White House, came together to suppress the truth. And what happened on July 17, 1996 for no larger purpose than to reelect Bill Clinton president. And helping them out was the New York Times. Without which not of this taking place was the New York Times. Much more so in that case than even today, because the crash happened in the New York Times backyard, that is right off the coast of Long Island. So they were able to swarm the scene with their reporters, and they owned the story. The FBI spoke only, or almost exclusively to the New York Times. Certainly all new breaking stories went through the New York Times. And once they controlled the New York Times, they were able to shape the narrative whichever way they wanted. And they did, and they succeeded. And it is clearly the most successful cover-up in American peacetime history.
And that pretty much is what's happening now. The New York Times gets all these quote-unquote leaks, even though they walk them back later on because they're wrong, and they, bury it on, below the fold on the 50th page.
Donna and Jack, for the sake of the listeners that did not hear the show the last time you were on with us, Jack, and for those younger listeners, because believe it or not, we've got some millennials that are listening to this show that are not going to be familiar with the significance of TWA Flight 800. Give everybody a thumbnail, either one of you can do this, but a thumbnail sketch of what went down in 96 with regard to TWA 800. Let's kind of put it into a packaging for the listeners, and then let's get into what we're talking about between the difference and the conspiracy.
Yeah, Jack, I'll let you take that since you're so much better at it than I am. And then I want to infuse what I saw because I was out there that morning working for Fox 5 in New York as well.
Well, let's set that up with the first start to talk about the political environment at the time. In July 96, Bill Clinton had fought back from, he had been elected first time in 92. Fought back from the political graveyard after the disastrous midterms in 1994, and now had a commanding lead over Bob Dole in the polls. Barring the unforeseen, barring a disaster, he was going to win. This is an important parallel, because in 96, all the agencies of the government thought that Clinton was going to be the president of the United States again for the next term. And then on the night of July 17th, 1996, the unthinkable happened. And I came to this conclusion as to the responsible parties very reluctantly, because I would much rather have it be terrorism. I would have felt more comfortable had a terrorist missile shot down TWA Flight 800 off the coast of Long Island on its way to Paris, 230 people on board on a perfectly clear night, a July night, but it wasn't. All of the evidence points to a naval misfire. And the Navy would not have or could not have covered it up by itself. They had to have gotten word almost immediately, run for cover. Once they ran for cover, then the various agencies of government went to work. The NTSB should have been responsible. I mean, by law, they were the ones responsible for domestic airplane crash. They were shoved off the scene immediately by the FBI, the Justice Department, working through the FBI. But what I only learned within the last few years was that the FBI really wasn't managing this investigation either. The CIA was. The CIA was brought in on day one. I have their documents. I know that I'm not just talking off the top of my head here. From day one, they were the ones responsible for determining finally what happened.
Is that legal? Because isn't the CIA supposed to be international?
No, not only, exactly. Not only can they not legally have any involvement with these domestic affairs, but, and this is where it really gets perverse, the very woman who wrote the Wall memo that separated the FBI and CIA, that prevented them from collaborating on information, which in fact ended up causing or leading to September 11th, was running the investigation. She was the Deputy Attorney General, Jamie Gorelick. And the collusion on this case is so staggering, it's almost funny. And that they got away with it was possible for two reasons. One is that the Internet was still in its infancy at the time. And they were not, they were not able. I mean, people couldn't even communicate with each other. The 250 eyewitnesses didn't know about each other. They only thought there was a handful. They always thought they were one of a handful. Maybe they were crazy. And the other reason was that the New York Times owned the story. And if this had happened in West Virginia, we probably would have known the truth. But since it happened right in New York Times backyard, they were able to. The FBI was fully able to control the flow of information through the New York Times.
Let me tell everybody what I saw, and I'll refresh your memory too, Jack CASHILL. Again, He's the author of the book TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy. Back then, they let cameramen take their cameras home with them. Those cameras were expensive. And this way, if there was any breaking news, they were right there. And that's exactly what happened to my cameraman who lived out in Suffolk County, Long Island, which is out where this occurred. His friend calls him up and says, there's a crash of a major jetliner. I have a boat. Let's go out there. My cameraman, and I'm 2.5 hours away, so I'm driving in at this point. My cameraman is the one who took all those pictures that you saw where all the flames were burning in the water, pieces of wreckage.
Yes, right.
From this guy's boat. He had all the original stuff, and it was horrible. I don't want to get graphic here, but I feel like it's needed. He said they were pulling body parts onto this boat, so much so that the boat was getting weighted down, and they had to let some of these body parts go back. And he said, I know I'm releasing somebody's mother, somebody's child, somebody's father. I gotta tell you, this chokes me up even thinking about it now. I don't mean to do this. Anyhow,
understandable. Is that fellow still around? Is he
this
willing
is like
to talk?
PTSD for me. I got to tell you this.
Yeah.
And you know what? I can't remember his name. I cannot remember his name to this day. But I can tell you that their sharks were everywhere. Stuff was getting... He said it was just horrible. It was like being in a war zone. So when he gets back, I'm interviewing a guy who was an eyewitness. He was, I want to say Swedish. He had an accent. He said, I'm in a small airplane flying at about, 1,500 feet. My friend who's riding shotgun looks at me and says, jetliner at 3 o'clock. He said, I turned to my right, and right when I turned to my right, boom, I saw something go up and the thing exploded right in front of me. And we had internet problems right after that. And then when I went back to find this guy, I couldn't find him. He was one of those 258. And then I'm going to say one other thing that nobody talked about. All that original footage, from what I hear, and I just heard it from hearsay, I cannot collaborate, but I heard that footage was stored in a warehouse at Fox 5 headquarters on Long Island, and that warehouse burned down. So that footage, that original footage, is gone. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I was a little kid when Kennedy got shot, but I got to tell you, there has never been there has never been a Boeing 747. They were the workhorses of flying back then that ever exploded before that or after that, period. Right. Unless it was brought down by unfriendly fire.
Yeah, I mean, or there's one case that they tried to make it. Actually, it was a 737 that blew up on the tarmac in Thailand, but just before the corrupt president of Thailand was about to board, it blew up, and then they tried to say, "Oh, it was just a center fuel tank explosion." No.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why I'm laughing. This is horrible, but yeah, sometimes you have to do that just to keep your sanity. That's a harrowing story, Donna. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's totally harrowing, and there were a lot of things that went missing. Perhaps most notable was a videotape of the actual missile. And we know about this. I mean, I know about it. I know a lot about it, but I've never seen it. But I talked to a guy, and and he gave me his name. I used his name in the book, Thomas Young, his name. He was a 747 pilot for a cargo line. He was laid up in a Hong Kong hospital, and his wife came to visit. He was there during the whole aftermath of the shoot down, and he had back surgery. And he said, we watched that video on Hong Kong TV at least 50 to 100 times. They played it over and over again, And Nelson DeMille, who has great sources on Long Island, a best-selling novelist, based his novel on Nightfall, which is a great read, by the way, for anyone looking for a good summer book about TWA Flight 800 on the missing video. I know, too, the MSNBC bought the rights to that video. They played it several times. And MSNBC had been in the air for 2 days when this happened.
Yeah, I remember
I'm told that the price was like $50,000. They played it several times. I know not directly but indirectly, the fellow who was the technician for MSNBC at the time, he talked about what happened. They aired it a few times. A couple men in suits came, demanded all the copies, threatened them, with all kinds of, sanctions if they should ever talk about it or play it or keep a copy of it, and that was that. Hundreds of people told me they saw it on TV. I did not, but I have no doubt that video existed. There's photos as well, but still photos, a couple that did surface. But it was a serious cover-up, and the real culprit, though, in my mind, is the New York Times.
Like you say in your piece in American Thinker, I mean, the New York Times was the paper of record back then. But the difference is now we have the Internet. So that video from Hong Kong would have been all over the Internet had it been around.
Oh, absolutely. Right, and the witnesses would have been talking to each other.
Exactly. Let me ask you your take on somebody who's been all over the Fox News Channel and other news channels lately, and that is James Kallstrom.
He was the head of the investigation for the FBI.
What's your take on him?
I'm going to tell you that a Kallstrom story that I don't think I've ever told on the air before. In the run-up to the 2016 election, Kallstrom was like the terrorist expert or something for Fox News. And he was the most outspoken critic of the Clintons, leading up to that election. So a couple weeks before the election, I sent him a certified letter. I got his address in Connecticut. And I said, hey, listen, you want to bring the Clintons down? Let's tell the truth about what happened on the night of July 17th before the election. And I had heard that he was a profane bully. Well, about a week or so before the election, I gotta add a little detail here because it makes the story even stranger. To avoid the election, I voted an absentee and went to France for a few weeks, And I was sitting out on I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting out on the promenade in Nice, where there had been a terrible terrorist attack just a few months earlier. With that truck attack right in that promenade. And I get this call. It says coming from Connecticut. I just take the call. And it's Kallstrom calling me. I left my phone number. And I had heard that he was a profane bully. And he more than lived up to his reputation, He was, how dare you, say this, blah, blah, blah. What particularly troubled him is that I've been in touch with several family members who are still outraged that the truth was suppressed. Family members both in France and the United States, because the plane was on its way to Paris. I had a lot of French citizens on board. And I said, every time I hear it from these people, every time they see you on Fox, they're seething. They're saying,
me too. That would be me. I'm raising my hand. And the thing is,
right.
He's Mr. Anti-Trump. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You know what memory
he's Mr.
I have?
Pro-Trump.
I mean, well, he's anti-Trump now. I'm sorry, pro-Trump, anti-Clinton now.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here. You know what what's baked in my memory, in my mind's eye right now, is these big black limousines coming in with tinted windows and seeing, it was like a movie scene, Jack, and seeing the windows go up and close because they had been halfway down when they started to come into the area where all the reporters were in the staging vicinity, right, on the shoreline there, and where they eventually would start to put together this jet when they put the pieces back together. And that was James Kallstrom in there. And I'm thinking to myself, something's going on here.
Jack, let me interject a question here. Now, we all know that the President of the United States, regardless of who it is, has extraordinary power. Is there not some type of an investigation that Donald Trump could open, or does he have access to the real files of the cover-up to where, if in fact he wanted to, he could expose this? Now, clearly, now's not the time, and we can get into the comparisons that you've made between the two situations. But he does have, through any type of a presidential edict or, what's the word I'm looking for, a presidential finding, that he could actually expose this. Could he not?
I believe he could. I mean, there's enough information in my book. I mean, the CIA files that they released a couple years ago were astonishingly revealing. I was shocked how much information they gave away. They were almost bragging about it, by that time. Yes, he could. Now, just back to Kallstrom's sense, and it's helped to answer your question, I had to change my opinion of him after I talked to him. I had not talked to him before that. I had presumed that he was coerced into this, either on some sort of national security ruse, because he managed the investigation. He's utterly responsible for everything that happened in that investigation. and that he was now trying to atone, by trying to take down the Clintons and support Trump. But after talking to him,
he's in the CYA mode.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
The director of the FBI, the head of the FBI, works at the pleasure of the president. Correct?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a definition of the role.
Right, but he wasn't the head of the FBI at the time. He was head of the New York office. Louis
Okay,
Freeh
I got
just,
you. I got
backed
you. My
away
bad.
and let Kallstrom do it. Now, Kallstrom, but after talking to him, I'm not. I was shocked how little he seemed to know about the investigation. For instance, he said, "You're not going to tell me the terrorists shot down that missile, are you?" I said, "I wish I could, but that's not what happened." I said, all the evidence, I regret that it leads here, but it all leads to the Navy doing it. And he goes, "You sound just like effing." There's a lot of F-bombs dropped, by the way, in this conversation.
Who was the head of the FBI at that point?
Was Mueller
Louis
in there?
Freeh.
Louis Freeh.
No. Okay.
I don't know what Mueller
hold on
was
a
doing
second,
at the time,
though.
but yeah.
Again, the head of the FBI works at the pleasure of the
president, which is Bill
now,
Clinton.
If Bill Clinton is directing that head of the FBI to do that, then Kallstrom is going to be doing exactly what he's told, or he's going to lose his job. Am I correct?
That's what I assumed. That was what actually, Clinton got very small fingerprints on this. He was working through Jamie Gorelick, who was the Deputy Attorney General. He didn't trust Janet Reno, who was the actual Attorney General.
Yeah.
And I don't think Gorelick trusted Louis Freeh, who was the actual FBI director. So they worked. Gorelick worked through the Southern New York U.S. Attorney's Office, and what's her name? Caproni, I think, was the name of the woman who was the head of it. There was something of I hate to say this, kind of a lesbian mafia going on here, and then she out of the New York office, they ran the FBI. So there were a lot of people skipped over, and I think they were happy to be skipped. Louis Freeh almost doesn't even show up in the investigation. But on day one, and this was news to Kallstrom, he pretended he didn't know this. I don't think he may not have known it. The CIA took over, really, because their job was to determine what the eyewitnesses saw. And it was, and I said to him, the CIA was deeply involved from day one. He goes, "Oh, no, we just let him do that cartoon. We shouldn't have let him do that." Yeah. No, they were determining this. They were involved from day one. I have the files, Yeah. And then this was coming to Kallstrom like it was news,
We're talking with Jack Cashill. He's the author of the book TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy. And his latest article in American Thinker parallels that, trying to get Bill Clinton reelected, with what's going right now with the Mueller investigation, trying to get Hillary Clinton elected president, and how these conspiracies are tied together. Jack, tell us again, tie it together with what's happening now with this Mueller investigation.
Well, and I would say what the parallel is that you had these agencies of government working together when they weren't supposed to. I would say the FBI and the CIA, and under the indirect direction of the President of the United States and through his Deputy Attorney General, with the essential assistance of the New York Times. Now, there are some differences, obviously, but and here's the one critical one, is that TWA 800, however vast its scale, was not unusual in government annals. It's a conspiracy of concealment, and that happens all the time in all governments from the beginning of time. Something goes wrong, you conspire to cover it up. I mean, it happens in police departments and state governments, happens everywhere. Here's the difference, and this is why the current problem is even worse, is you had a conspiracy of concealment, that is with Hillary's, server and all her emails, that whole part of the investigation. But you also had a conspiracy of execution, and this is extremely rare in the United States history, where people conspire to do something, to do something evil, or to do something nefarious, agencies of government coming together to do harm to another entity, in this case the Trump campaign. That makes this a different level of conspiracy than Flight 800 or Benghazi, which was also a real parallel there. It was a conspiracy of concealment.
And Fast
Same
and
thing.
Furious and everything else. And the thing is, this is entrapment, I feel. They've tried to conspire against Donald Trump to not get him elected. When he got elected, this is their worst nightmare. So they're just doubling down, because I think right now they're trying to get through the midterm elections. And if, God forbid, the Republicans lose, then this would be covered up. But Hillary, and I always go back to the initial report, and that is TWA Flight 800 was taken out by a surface-to-air missile. Where it came from is debatable. And with Hillary Clinton, just one big statement this last go-round with the election when she lost, and that is, we are you-know-whatted if he wins. Because they all were aligning themselves with her, thinking she's going to be president. The same with Obama, as far as him getting his foundation put together, done the same way. It's basically a tax-free slush fund. And if Hillary's president, none of this gets brought out. It all gets covered up. And this really scares me, Jack Cashill, because I don't trust the CIA and the FBI and the Homeland Security, nothing anymore. I really don't.
Well, and the irony is the FBI is, I've talked to a lot of individual agents. It is a very conservative organization. I would guess that 80% of them for Donald Trump for president. And unfortunately, that 80% aren't sitting at the top of the food chain there.
Exactly.
CIA is different.
Exactly.
CIA is the opposite. CIA is a creature of Washington, and too many of the recruits come out of Ivy League schools, and they've always been of the left. Even back to the OSS days, they were mired and communists, in fact, in OSS.
Well, but, what's his face? Brennan is an avowed communist and converted to Islam too. I mean, he's a Muslim, but he was a member of the Communist Party USA, and you got him running the CIA. This is crazy.
I don't know how that happened.
We only have about a minute left, Jack Cashill. Again, his book, TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy. Let me ask you real quick. You have any idea where that jet is now that they put together and then all of a sudden it was gone again?
Yeah, I think they moved it to Virginia. It's always been a Potemkin jet. It said nothing. It was just for show. Yeah. I mean, there was big holes. It was an exercise done for propaganda purposes, nothing else. And it seemed to serve a purpose for the media, who were so easily dissuaded from the truth. It's shocking. Although now we see them not even vaguely faking an interest in the truth.
Yeah, they really have gotten so brazen.
The most shocking part about what's going on now is the media's absolute failure to see what the rest of us are seeing. It's the first time in history that the average person knows more than the newsroom at the New York Times.
Yeah,
they don't want to see it.
Well, it's just like James Kallstrom.
It doesn't fit their narrative.
They got blinders on like Kallstrom does. And you're right in your piece, basically saying without the internet, we would have this, we probably would have had Hillary, that's for sure. And I beg to say, coming up in this next election, the way Facebook is and Twitter, that everybody is kind of being censored now, and that's a scary thought in and of itself. Well, Jack Cashill, unfortunately, time is up already. Folks, look for his book, TWA Flight 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy, and read him in WorldNet Daily and American Thinker. This latest article in American Thinker is really eye-opening. And Jack, we thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hey, Don, thank you for having me.
And coming up next, we'll be talking to Gordon Chang about what's going on with North Korea. And winding up the show, Sidney Powell, author of the book License to Lie, exposing the corruption in the Department of Justice. That pretty much sums it all up. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Come on, take in my dark sunglasses. 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 Come on, take in my dark sunglasses.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, bodies filled with hurt, they would sit around
back to Cowboy Logic Radio. We're going to be talking with Gordon Chang this next half hour because Gordon is the go-to guy for everything that's going on in Asia, especially with what's going on in North Korea. And, of course, you've seen him on all the news channels. He's actually in his car
he's headed right now.
Yes, he's heading to the Fox News channel as we speak. So full disclosure, this is going to be on tape. So, Gordon, by the time this airs in 2 days, maybe something else will happen with North Korea. But right now,
let's timestamp it so that everything's accurate. Ladies and gentlemen, we have caught up with Gordon Chang in transit into New York City. Who are you going to talk to right now, Gordon?
It's going to be Ed Henry, and I think it's American News HQ.
All right.
Oh, okay.
So we've got Gordon mobile right this moment, heading into the city. And so it's Saturday when this interview's taking place.
And the thing is, Gordon, when the whole on again, off again, now back on again, or actually say it was on again, then off again, and back on again. The
game
situation.
On?
Yeah, the game on, game off.
Game on?
What is your take as to why this is? I mean, in my opinion, as far as a reporter's concerned, this is sausage making. You really don't want to see it being made. You just kind of want to wait for the outcome afterwards.
Yes, but, at this particular time, Donna, I think it puts our president, in a pretty good light. We had President Trump on Thursday morning saying he was withdrawing from the summit, and he said that because of North Korea's harsh rhetoric and the number of things that they had talked about in terms of Vice President Pence. Also, the North Koreans, a few hours before the withdrawal, had said that they were threatening nuclear war on the United States. And then Thursday afternoon, we learned from Secretary of State Pompeo that the North Koreans stood up the American advance team in Singapore. The State Department had sent a number of officials to scout out locations and to talk to North Korea. North Korea's team didn't show up, so the president had to do something. And as soon as he did it, Donna, the North Koreans turned unusually conciliatory. And that's important because the North needs this meeting. And so now the meeting is back on again. That's a good thing. And it shows that President Trump has the North Koreans' number. There are a number of people who have said, no one has good relations with North Korea. I remember Stapleton Roy, a former American diplomat, mentioning that to me. And that's true. But what President Trump did on Thursday was he showed that he knows how to deal with the North Koreans. And that's to his credit.
It's all about the art of the deal, right, Gordon? I mean, on Thursday morning when that letter came out and Trump made the announcement that the talks had been canceled, that he was canceling the talks, the left-wing media, the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they're all in lockstep. And they're all bashing Donald Trump, and they're all saying, oh, here he was doing his end zone dance, and now that's not going to take place. He looks like a complete idiot. But by the time I got home, the entire game had changed. And all of a sudden, the talks were back on. North Korea was bowing down to Trump again. And, I have yet to see anybody in the left-wing media or Chuck Schumer or Pelosi or any of these other clapping seals that take, that are on the Democrat Party in the House and the Senate. None of them have walked back and said, hey, you know what? Maybe we were wrong. They'll never do that, obviously. But did you notice the huge flip, the 180 that took place in one day?
Yeah, and we can remember, just going back to the early part of, let's say, Tuesday or so, you had a lot of people worrying very much about President Trump wanting the summit too much. They say, well, he wants a Nobel Prize, so he'll come to a bad deal with North Korea just to get it. And then Thursday, the president disproved all the critics by saying, look, I'm walking away from the summit because the North Koreans are speaking inappropriately and acting inappropriately. And so, that whole meme has now died down. This is extremely difficult. Our president might not be able to arrive at a deal with the North Koreans. This could end up being terrible. But, for the moment, we are on a path to peace. We're on a path to peace on our terms. So far, the United States has made no concessions. North Koreans have made a lot of concessions. So this is really good diplomacy. And so I think that at least at this particular time, we can all be optimistic. And certainly we should credit the administration for doing things that nobody else in the world has ever been able to do. and that is to put the North Koreans in their place.
This is something that's been going on for, 50 years. We have this Korean quote-unquote conflict. We lost 50,000 people there. Of course, though, the mainstream media and revisionist historians are trying to change that. But, Gordon, your book, The Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, was released 10 years ago. Actually, 12 years ago now, right? I mean, this has been going on for so long. What do you feel at this point are various scenarios that could happen? I mean, the mainstream media right now is saying, well, what happened was Kim actually read Trump's The Art of the Deal. So he's trying to turn the pages on Trump and trying to act cool. And then all of a sudden, again, that didn't happen, as we just discussed. But what scenarios could we have, and what would happen to Kim if he were to totally give everything up? I mean, would he give up his presidency? Would, he just keep running the country? I mean, what would happen in North Korea?
Really, at this point, the range of options goes from the very best to the very worst. From the very best, North Korea could give up both its nukes and its missiles. That's not inconceivable. The United States has the power to do that, short of the use of force. And President Trump can use the elements of American power to achieve what everyone thought was unimaginable. The president's going to have to demonstrate some political will to do that, but I think that certainly that's within the realm of the possible. On the other hand, we could have some extremely gruesome scenarios occur. So, for instance, some people think that at this time we should strike North Korea's missile and nuke facilities. That very well may end up with the North Koreans not responding. But we could also have them launch an invasion of Seoul. Of course, the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese would take advantage of the situation and cause trouble in their neighborhoods. So one possible outcome of this is global conflict. But I tend to believe that the more optimistic scenarios are the ones that we'll see, largely because the North Koreans at this point understand that the United States has a leader who is willing to use power to prevent the North Koreans from doing what they want. So this is, at least at this moment, a pretty good scenario for us.
I agree. And the thing is, I think that Kim wants to be relevant. He wants to be a significant individual on the world stage. And the thing is, if Kim plays his cards right with this and decides that he actually wants to work with Trump and does it with any level of integrity, he will become relevant on the world stage. He will be admired by some. He's already admired by the left-wing media. But the bottom line is, if he fails to do that, he will be exterminated. Then he's no longer relevant. Now, Gordon, you brought up a moment ago, you were using the word nukes and missiles in the same sentence. I want to get your take on a thought I've got, and that is that missiles, nobody's talking about that in the mainstream media. Everybody's talking about the nuke option, the nuke aspect of this, when in fact, Kim's got probably, if not the largest, one of the largest stockpile of chemical and biological weapons aimed at South Korea. And that, to me, is as big of a concern as his nuclear capabilities.
Yes, we have a whole range of issues that we are going to talk to. One of them, of course, nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and the other weapons of mass destruction, and that's chemical and biological agents, as you point out. Also, there's another issue that deserves some mention, and that is when Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, was in Washington, President Trump made a public pledge to get the return of the abductees. These are Japanese citizens who have been kidnapped from Japanese soil, from Europe and elsewhere, and brought to Pyongyang, primarily for language instruction. This is a political issue in Japan, of course, and President Trump said that he would do his best to get them back. Also, while we're on this topic, something that we don't talk about, and that is, it's great that we got the 3 American hostages back, but there's also possibly a fourth, David Snett, who was taken from China in mysterious circumstances in August 2004. Many people believe he is in North Korea. I would like the North Koreans to publicly state either they have or they don't have David Snedden. We need a public accounting for his family, if for no other reason. But we have to remember there are many people who have been taken by North Korea. And while we're on this topic, just one thing.
there's probably more than 500 South Koreans who've been abducted by North Korea. And to the shame of Seoul, they don't really have exerted any effort to bring their people back. And this reflects on Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president, who's got pro-North Korean sympathies. We've got to be very concerned about Moon as he interacts with Kim Jong-un.
I agree. In your estimation, how many Japanese are being held in North Korea?
That's a great question. The Japanese government believes, I think the number is 19 in total, and 5 were returned. North Korea has publicly admitted to taking Japanese, but their number, I believe, is 5 fewer. So there is a difference in the accounting here, and the Japanese would like to know about the additional people. But what's occurred in the early part of last decade, 2002, I believe, that they did return 5 abductees, and that was a good start. But there's more to be done in that regard.
We're talking with Gordon Chang. He's author of the book Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. And the thing is, that was released back in January of 2006. This has been going on for decades. Of course, we have the Korean conflict where we lost so many American heroes. And for Donald Trump to come in at this point and have a chance even to get North Korea to get rid of its nukes and to possibly reunite the Korean Peninsula is just amazing. Gordon, let me also add, you are a guest on WABC Radio with John Batchelor on Mondays, and then you co-host Wednesday nights, which is Asia Night with John Batchelor in the big powerhouse WABC Radio in New York City. Folks, his writings on China and North Korea have appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Far Eastern Economic Review, the Weekly Standard, National Review. You've seen them on all the major news channels.
Well, and I have to interject something here, Donna and Gordon. Gordon, Donna and I were absolute clapping seals. We were elated that you were on Mark Levin's show.
Yes.
My gosh, man. We were so thrilled about that. Can you take a minute and maybe we can get a little bit off topic here? But talk about the show that you did with Mark Levin, because people can obviously find that on YouTube and watch it. We recorded it, Gordon, so we've watched it a couple of times. Can you share that experience with everyone?
Oh, that was a real thrill for me, Don. You know, we went to his studio, and I was there with like 2 hours sleep for that. So I wish, my only regret is that I could have gotten a better night's sleep. But this is, a real thrill for us, because I had seen Mark before once, but only briefly. And so last week I got an opportunity to spend more time with him. And so, it's the high point of the year. For me, it was just, I was on cloud 9.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, clearly you and your wife are not only dear friends of Donna's and I, but you're a hero to us. You're doing yeoman's work. We look at Mark Levin like he's the godfather of talk radio. I mean, quite frankly, I don't listen to anybody else. But
his knowledge, too, of the Constitution is really helping this whole situation with the Mueller investigation. So that obviously is another story.
Mark, here's the thing. Mark did the right thing by having you come on his show.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. He did the right thing. He did the same thing with other subject matter experts like Dr. Peter Pry. What was it like, Gordon, for the two great individuals, in my opinion, to be able to interact like you guys did? I mean, that just had to be amazing for both of you, quite frankly.
Well, Mark is great. I wish I were, but in any event,
you are, Gordon.
The thing about
You're
Mark
just
is
humble.
He is. Well, anyway, Mark is a force of intellect. He reaches so many people around the world. And it just, for us, it was, as I said, it was just a moment. And afterwards, we had our pictures taken together. It was just too much fun. It should be illegal. It was too much fun.
Well, thankfully, it's not illegal yet.
My claim to fame is that you, Gordon Chang, and I went to the same high school. And I didn't even know you then, but hey, we went to the same high school. Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Who's older, you or Gordon?
I don't know. Gordon doesn't look older. That's the problem. I don't
know.
What women can't.
Okay,
age.
we're gonna solve this.
No, we're not. You never ask a lady her age.
We're gonna solve it.
No, you don't.
We're not gonna ask age. Gordon, what year did you graduate high school?
1969, And Don, I was born on July 5, 1951. So
See, I wasn't gonna
that
ask
doesn't put any pressure on your wife to reveal her age.
Guys can say their age. I'm just going to say I'm smiling then.
Donna's excited because she's younger than you are.
I'm smiling then. And let's get down to seriousness here again. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
And just one more thing, Donna. When you mentioned that, we were driving on 78 West through Maplewood, New Jersey, where I lived when I went to Columbia High School. So there it is.
Timing is everything.
You obviously had the Maplewood, Columbia High School, South Orange thing in mind. It was sort of like you have a sixth sense.
I was going to say it's a sixth sense, and I know it well. Vauxhall Road, I forget the exit number, though, and 26 Collinwood Road, Maplewood,
Turnpike
New Jersey
Parkway.
for me. Yeah, Turnpike and Parkway. Parkway exit 145. All right, so getting back to seriousness here. Of course, the mainstream media, which is such an embarrassment now, takes the North Korean side whenever possible, including Nancy Pelosi. It just blows my mind. And so now what they're saying is he has the upper hand. And what really scares me, though, Gordon Chang, is that the mainstream media has made some reference as to Muammar Gaddafi and what his fate was. And Hillary Clinton saying, we came, we saw, he died, referring to Gaddafi. In this case, so many people are saying, well, Kim is being a little bit wary, and obviously so, because he doesn't want the same outcome. And we really betrayed Libya in many respects.
There's an important aspect to this that people often forget when they criticize John Bolton over the comments he made at the end of April about the Libyan model. And that is, when the North Koreans canceled their summit with South Korea, and when they said that they might not meet with President Trump, they referred to Bolton's comments. But we've got to remember that those comments were made on the Sunday talk shows at the end of April. It was like 10 days later that the North Koreans released the 3 Americans. Now, if the North Koreans were that upset about what Bolton said, they would not have let those Americans go. I think what they were doing was just trying to use an excuse. And we've just got to remember this chronology. The North Koreans can say a lot of things, but we should never take them at face value. And it's important for us to just understand the dynamics here. So this whole talk about Bolton, I think, has just been so overblown. And the North Koreans, they might have been upset, but they weren't so upset that they would not continue discussions with the United States. And as I mentioned, releasing the 3 hostages.
Gordon Chang, when we hear comments that allegedly come from North Korea like that, or positions that come from North Korea like we heard with regard to Bolton, how often is that actually China speaking and pulling the strings of the puppet Kim? How often is it actually China's words that the Kim regime might be actually speaking? You raise a critical point, and that is that some of the events that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, I think, are certainly China influenced. Kim Jong-un went to Beijing end of March. Also, he went there on the 7th and 8th of this month. And it's extraordinary for a North Korean leader to make 2 consecutive trips to China, such as Kim did. Because after the first visit, Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, said that he was going to go to Pyongyang. President Trump, on Tuesday, when he was meeting Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president, in Washington, actually referred to the malign influence that China was exerting on Kim, because our president said that the North Korean attitudes changed markedly after that second Kim-Xi summit, the one in Dalian on the 7th and 8th of this month. And that's a real indication. Don, we have seen over the course of the last 2.5 or so months a marked deterioration in China's sanctions enforcement. And it's good for President Trump to have called out the Chinese, because I think that they indeed are pulling some of the strings right now. And they're doing so not to help the United States and the international community. They're doing that to cause trouble. And we've got to call out the Chinese and the North Koreans whenever we think about this, because they, at this particular moment, are acting together.
Gordon Chang, we have a couple minutes left. Can you speak a little bit about the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, and the fact that he does have socialist tendencies? What's wrong with these people? Is it the lust for power? And that sort of scares me too, because if these things work out with North Korea, the Korean Peninsula could go socialist or communist, no?
Oh, definitely. This is a concern that the United States has not been paying attention to. Moon himself is probably very much a pro-North Korean sympathizer. What we know, though, is that his close advisors in their youths were actually members of Juche revolution groups. Juche is the North Korean ideology. And these revolution groups were hoping to bring North Korea's system to the South. In other words, Pyongyang taking over Seoul. You know, a lot of people in their youth said things that they would like to retract, but Moon's advisors have not disavowed their views and their actions when they were younger. And this is a real indication that is up to no good. We know that Moon is trying to amend the South Korean constitution to make it more compatible with North Korea's. He wants to see a unification, and not necessarily on Seoul's terms. So this is something that we've got to watch, because we can sort of do a number of things to restrict flows of money to North Korea. South Korea can undermine those efforts quite easily. And they're our partner, and they're acting inconsistent with being a treaty partner of the United States.
Well, here's the thing. All we have to do is look at the GDP for North Korea and the GDP for South Korea, and we can clearly see that Moon's got a great idea going here.
Or Google Maps for that, or a Google Earth for that matter, the North.
Yes. Maybe South Korea, the great, wonderful, kind citizens of South Korea would like to start grazing in their city parks, too, for nutrition.
Yeah, really. I've yet to see any time communism and socialism ends well. No one talks about Venezuela either, which right now is resorting to eating animals from the zoo. Well, Gordon Chang, everybody can find his work at gordonchang.com. And in a few hours, well, I should say Saturday afternoon, because we are taping this, you'll see him on the Fox News channel. But and if you live in the New York City area, or if you have the WABC app, which I do have, you can listen to him on the John Batchelor Show on Monday nights and co-host Wednesday nights, which is Asian Night, on the big powerhouse WABC radio. And find his work again at gordonchang.com. He is author of the book Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. And Gordon, we're going to have to say goodbye to you before you head into the Lincoln Tunnel, and we lose you for good anyhow. But thank you so much for joining us as usual here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Oh, Donna, such a blast. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
And love to your lovely wife, Lydia. We'll talk to you guys soon. And coming up next, we're going to be talking to Sidney Powell, author of the book License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice, coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. 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 Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Donald Trump came to Washington vowing to drain the swamp and make government work for the American people. But the swamp creatures in D.C. aren't going down without a fight, and the deep state is determined to overturn the election and keep their gravy train rolling. In these turbulent times, it's critical for patriots to stay engaged and be prepared to defend this president. You can stay up to date on Trump's battle to make America great again by listening to America First Radio with Jim Dawes each weeknight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Liberty Feed.
The deep state wants to stop Donald Trump. Now, Jerome Corsi's powerful new book, Killing the Deep State, rips the lid off the secret war against Trump. Killing the Deep State reveals the shocking plot by the FBI, CIA, and NSA to end the Trump presidency. It's already a #1 Amazon bestseller. Newsmax says you can't ignore Killing the Deep State. Get it at bookstores everywhere or check out the free offer. Go online to deepstate411.com or call 800-406-0921.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN.
Who is behaving.
Yes,
Have you noticed
behaving
that?
This whole show.
It's the new me, Donna.
You are.
It's the new me.
You behave with Jack
But
Cashel.
I am thinking pink, and I don't mean code pink. I am thinking hot-looking pink outfit. Stellar, classy, pink-looking outfit. That's what I'm thinking about right now, Donna.
That has to be one outfit worn by Sidney Powell.
Yes!
In the various appearances she makes on the Fox News channel. Correct?
Well, she's had it on from time to time. It happens to be my favorite, and I also know that it travels well.
Yes. Actually, Sidney Powell, I think last time I saw you on Hannity, you had a different outfit on. I was surprised.
Well, she's got more than one outfit. This just happens to be my
I try to vary it every now and then, although I must say, if I think Don's watching, I try to wear the pink.
Thanks, Sidney.
Woohoo! Well, Sidney Powell, you are the author of a book that came out a number of years ago, but it was so prophetic because it wrote about all these actual players in the Mueller investigation. And the name of that book is Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. Folks, you can find it at licensedtolie.com. So
I
Sidney
need to
Powell,
interject. I need to interject about this book. Sidney, I'm going to shamelessly plug your book for you, which I do every time you're on the show because I love you like a sister. But here's the thing. Ladies and gentlemen, I bought the book. I didn't get a free copy of the book from Sidney. I bought the book. I even paid the extra money to have it autographed. So if I did that, a guy that could probably just call her up and say, hey, Sidney, would you send me a copy of your book? I bought it. Now I can insist that that's what you do. So that's what I'm doing. Licensedtolie.com. Go buy the book. You don't have to pay the extra money if you don't want to have it autographed, but I would encourage you to do so. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy when it arrives. Back to you,
Can we
Donna.
get to the interview now?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I felt that was important to let everybody know.
Well, Sidney's book, Licensed to Lie, is the inside story of high-profile litigation of the last decade, including the prosecutions of Arthur Anderson, Enron, Merrill Lynch executives, Senator Ted Stevens. I mean, you have worked, Sidney, with both Republicans and Democrats in the DOJ, so therefore you're an equal opportunity offender, as I say. And you've worked on more than 500 federal appeals, resulting in more than 180 published decisions. So Sidney Powell knows from whence she speaks. So we have her on from time to time.
And the minute you open that book, the first paragraph of the book will suck you into it like a black hole.
Okay.
There you go.
That's what I call one heck of a endorsement there, Sidney.
The first paragraph of the book.
So, Sidney, given the Mueller investigation, given Rod Rosenstein, what you know about him, given Andrew Weitzman knowing what you know about him, and Robert Mueller and how they all work, I can't imagine why we'd bother to have you on the show again.
I can't either.
Yeah, nothing's going on
nothing
right
going
now.
on in the news about any of that.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's like every day it's something different. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It's like a twist and turn. It does seem like a novel, but unfortunately for the people participating, it's true. And many, as usual, are getting bankrupted because of all the legal fees. But to me, I think Mueller is just totally out of control. And let's start with this guy. What's his name? T.S. Eliot? The judge. Ellis, whatever. The judge.
No, the Judge Ellis.
All right. The judge sort of really lambasted Mueller and said, you're out of line. I want to see the parameters of this. We're still waiting for that decision. Do you think he's just a lot of hot air, or we actually might have something here that will give Mueller a smackdown that he so badly needs, in my opinion?
Well, I hope to goodness Judge Ellis does dismiss that indictment against Manafort for abuse of power, but we don't know what's in the paragraphs that were redacted from the Mueller authorization letter from Rosenstein. So Judge Ellis has that now, but we have no idea what's in it, which bothers me. I mean, I think Congress should know. I think the public should know.
So you think they're just dragging their feet all around until the midterm elections? I mean, it seems like that's the MO. It's kind of what they did with Hillary, and that didn't work. Now they're dragging their feet, throwing every monkey wrench in the book they can, sand in the gears for Donald Trump. And for somebody on a Senate Intelligence Committee or a congressional committee to ask for something and not have the DOJ comply, I mean, I just can't imagine this is going on.
Well, Rosenstein's arrogance is beyond measure. I mean, I was absolutely appalled with his whole attitude about that. And the very idea of him asserting that Congress was trying to extort information from the Department of Justice when it's Congress that created the Department of Justice, and Congress has the constitutional oversight authority over Department of Justice. It was an absolute outrage, and the kind of thing that Holder was held in contempt of Congress for, and frankly, Rosenstein should be too.
I don't understand why Rosenstein hasn't recused himself if indeed he did sign off on one of the FISA warrants.
He doesn't want to.
Well, but the point
he
is,
not only signed off on the FISA warrant, he's the one who wrote the memo telling the president to fire Comey in the first place.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. Why would Jeff Sessions have to recuse himself for a meeting with Kismayak and, that he didn't even remember when Rosenstein is in deep doo-doo all around with this? It's the double standard is mind-boggling. And where is Jeff Sessions?
I saw Jeff Sessions on the side of a milk carton the other day. That's what I did. I saw him there. I think it was at a store in Alabama. I saw that. I'm not sure.
In the past, we've been putting...
His picture was on a milk carton.
We've been putting bolos out for Jeff Sessions. Be on the lookout for. I mean, it's unbelievable. Do we have an attorney general?
I'm still hoping. Okay, I'm willing to give him until 3 months after the Inspector General's report comes out to have some indictments. I know he's had Huber on this, which could be an absolutely brilliant move if Huber's actually going to bring criminal charges against the people that they need to be brought against. But we just don't know that yet. I do know that I think some of the delays you're seeing in different places are from waiting for the IG report, because that investigation's been going on over a year. It's going to be massive. It's not even going to come out all in one thing, I've learned recently. This next installment, shall we call it, is going to be probably 400 to 500 pages, and it's going to cover the FBI's wrongdoing in the Hillary Clinton investigation and should be a scathing indictment of Mr. Comey. And then there will be one on the FISA abuses, which is really should track back to the unmaskings and be, just one stunning revelation after the other.
Well, the one thing that we all have to remember, and Sydney, I know you know this, I'm speaking mainly to the audience right now, is that the IG report, all that is going to be a batch of information that's given to the DOJ that says, here's what we found. Now, we're not going to suggest that you indict anybody. We're not going to suggest that you press criminal charges. We're not going to suggest anything other than here's the information that we found. And then we are going to be at the mercy of Jeff Sessions and the DOJ to do the right thing. Am I correct in that analogy?
Yes. But I think if that right thing isn't done, for example, the IG just came out with a 39-page report containing irrefutable information of Mr. McCabe's perjury and false statements under oath. So that has been referred for criminal prosecution. That should happen sometime soon. If it doesn't, the president will have every reason to hose out the Department of Justice with Clorox and fire hoses, and I'm going to man a volunteer fire department to go up there and help.
Yeah, me too. So how much teeth really does an IG report have? Because he can't really indict anybody. He can just make suggestions. And then, as you say, it's given to the DOJ, which is Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions, one of which is a commie lib and hates Trump, and the other one
one's missing. The other one, he's on a milk carton. He's missing right now, Donna. Where in the world is Jeff Sessions?
It doesn't have teeth per se, but it will be such an irrefutable collection of evidence that somebody jolly well better act on it.
Well, wouldn't it be lovely if the mainstream media would actually start doing their job? But we can't expect that to happen. Sydney, last week I noticed some of the Democrats in the House, the talking heads that were on some of the news shows, touting the great advances that Mueller had made with 17 indictments and 5, charges of criminal activity. And I'm like watching this going, I'm embarrassed for you. I'm embarrassed that this is your argument on television.
17 lawyers, tens of millions of dollars. Andrew McCarthy said
Half
they only
of them are in Russia,
right,
and are not even going to answer things.
I know. So what a joke that is. Andrew McCarthy said they had
actually,
3.
Some of the Russians did answer.
Oh, yeah. And they said, bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on.
We want discovery.
Meanwhile, Andrew McCarthy, who was the prosecutor for the 9/11 folks, terrorists, had 3 prosecutors working with him. Mueller's got 17. And they still haven't found anything in really what's a year and a half, because this started before Trump was elected. I mean, it's just a total joke. I put CNN on once in a while just to see what the enemy's doing. And I want to see what planet they are on. I think I'm watching a Star Trek episode. It's like the parallel universe. I can't. I'm like,
exactly. They just make it up as they go. And this whole notion that, Clappers now and Comey are admitting that there was a spy in the campaign. They're calling him a confidential informant.
Now he's a confidential informant. Yeah, just like you'd find in a cop show.
He was investigating.
Right, that's the same thing as a spy. So it's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, you can't do anything but laugh if you have any sort of reasoning abilities at all, because they're so desperate to try to craft a new narrative. They just keep digging themselves deeper and exposing their lying rear ends.
Yeah, and they look more and more ridiculous. The big concern, Sydney, and I don't want to turn this interview political, but the big concern I have is the midterm elections. If we lose the House in the midterm elections, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble.
I think everything that's going on now, Don, is going to cause even more people to pour out and support this president. That's exactly what needs to happen. Because we've made enormous, incredible progress in the last few months, more than lots of people who voted against him ever thought were possible. And I've seen story after story of people who were never Trumpers realizing that he does love this country and he is restoring our stature in the world and our economy and hopefully our borders soon, and doing everything he can. But by God, he needs more help. So we're going to have to step up and make sure he gets it.
Can you imagine I can't imagine the pressure and the tension and the stress on Donald Trump. He must thrive on it. He really has to be 71 years old. Maybe he's even 72 at this point. I'm not sure. But to be in his early 70s and having 90 to 95% of the mainstream media against you. I mean, if it really weren't for the internet I really feel obviously Hillary would already be in there and we wouldn't know any of this was happening. But we actually talked with Jack Cashill, who wrote a book on TWA Flight 800 earlier in the show. And he contends that cover-up basically was to try to get Bill Clinton reelected, and that if it weren't for the internet and mainstream media doing what they're doing, that, Hillary, the whole idea was to get Hillary elected this time around with a similar type of conspiracy, which is amazing. The difference is that conspiracy was a cover-up of something that already happened. This one is something totally made up. I mean, Sidney Powell, this is your next
something that's already happened.
Yeah, this is your next book here. I'm sorry.
Well, you got to check out my new website. You're going to love it. It's called Creeps on a Mission.
Creeps on a Mission.
Yeah, creepsonamission.com, and I need to send you all the T-shirt that goes with it. I'm going to try to help raise money for all kinds of people like Manafort and Flynn and everybody who's been a subject of the Mueller investigation that's been bankrupted because of it. And the notion, the graphic is Mueller, Comey, McCabe, Stroke, Page, Orr, and Weissman behind a battered seal of the Department of Justice. I hired an artist to do the graphics, and he did a great job, and I copyrighted it. And
Creepsonamission.com. Creepsonamission.com. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, go there right after you go to licensed.lie.com and you purchase the book. And I would encourage you to purchase the autographed copy. It's worth the extra money. Sidney Powell, if things end up playing out like people like you and Donna and I and our beloved listeners hope, what could potentially happen to some of these key players that have been going after Trump this way, both in the DOJ, in the FBI, in the CIA, in the former administrations?
The Oval Office.
Yeah, what's the best case scenario that we can sit around and pray for when we're at the altar?
That the rule of law is applied equally without regard to political party, which means a number of them will be indicted and serve some length of time in prison.
Now, that's the next thing that I'm glad you set me up for that. A lot of times with these high brass individuals in the government, they end up striking some kind of a deal for a lesser charge, and they never end up doing any time, unlike people like us that would be buried under the concrete in a cell. These guys will plead to a lesser charge of, making false statements or something like that, and they get let off. How can we hope that doesn't happen, and who's responsible for making sure it doesn't happen?
Well, once again, it's the Department of Justice that will be responsible for making sure that doesn't happen. But if we don't take serious action against these high-level people who conspired in the worst sense of the word to commit any number of crimes and screw the whole country, we've just got to do it.
We're on the verge of a banana republic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
We're really a banana republic. Sidney, I know you work during the week, but I have the TV on while I sit here trading stocks during the day. And one thing that Trump has done is he shows to the world all of his press conferences. This way, the media can't pick and choose what's going on. In fact, when they had the MS-13 gang confab, and he said they're animals, of course, the mainstream media jumped out and said, look, he's calling immigrants animals. And you could see, because obviously the whole thing had been given, that they took it out of context and they made themselves look like idiots as usual. Well, there was another MS-13 get-together out on Long Island. And this is something that Jeff Sessions has pretty much actually sort of done some stuff against MS-13 out on Long Island. So
that'd be Jeff Sessions. He did something. He's done something. He was present.
The first thing I'm thinking of, okay, he's going out to Long Island, President Trump, that is, so maybe Sessions will actually show himself. But alas, he's still gone.
There's a bolo out for Jeff Sessions. He's on a milk carton. He was not at that MS-13 meeting. Back to you, Donna.
But Rod Rosenstein was. I could tell because I could see his big nose profile. I'm sorry, but that's what kind of stood out to me. Anyhow, so Rosenstein is sitting there with all these other people that are on the front lines against MS-13. And the body language, Sidney Powell, was so telling. He didn't have hardly any eye contact with Trump. He never looked at the people who were speaking. He constantly went for the water like Marco Rubio. I wasn't close enough to see if he was sweating or not, but you could tell he didn't want to be there. He did speak at one point, and Trump was very gracious toward him, almost, like saying, hey, you're doing your job here, and we appreciate it because this is such a serious thing. But aside from that, you could just tell he didn't want to be there. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like having the fox in the hen house again. It's just unbelievable what's going on. Tell us a little bit about what your findings with this slime bucket are. I'll say it. Maybe you can't, but I'll say it.
Well, I was just appalled at his arrogance and defiance of Congress and calling their efforts to have their oversight authority recognized, which, by the way, just happens to be constitutional. I mean, he called it extortion by Congress, and his arrogance just defied imagination. Congress is the body that created the Department of Justice. It's not in the Constitution, and he is supposed to answer to them. I mean, they are the body that held Eric Holder in contempt, but of course never followed up to do anything about that. But the same thing needs to happen with respect to Rosenstein. They have got to have oversight authority over the Department of Justice. Otherwise, we have this rogue agency, which is obviously what we've had for at least the past 15 years, that thinks it runs everything else.
Talk a little bit about presidential powers, and to me, I equate this with the Lord of the Rings. To me, all these players are protecting the precious, and the precious is Barack Obama.
No, I think that's definitely true. That's obviously what Brennan and Clapper and Comey were all doing for at least 8 years, and maybe even before that. I'd love to know how far back it all went. Of course, Mueller would have been in that group too, since he was FBI director before Comey. So, I mean, they're all just thicker than thieves. And there's no telling what Obama ordered having done. One of the things I follow and just discovered within the past several months, I can't believe it took me that long to find it, is the conservativetreehouse.com. And they post a lot of the actual documents that support what they're talking about, which is a very important factor so people can read the documents themselves. One of the things they found was a couple of years ago when Admiral Rogers discovered the FISA abuses, the day after he shut down the FBI's unlawful giving of FISA access, raw FISA intel, to private contractors, Mary Jacoby, the wife of Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS, went over to the White House.
The plot thickens.
Yeah, I mean, the trail to the White House goes way back. Susan Rice's unmaskings, Lisa Monaco, its counterterrorism advisor, was a cover-up expert from the Enron task force. Catherine Rumler, his White House counsel, the same. I mean, he surrounded himself, as in an article I published ages ago, I think probably in 2014 or 2015, called All the President's Muses. I mean, he just surrounded himself with people that were willing to do anything to hide whatever needed to be hidden.
What about Samantha Power? She's basically what
the ambassador
Nikki Haley
to the
is.
UN.
Right. So she unmasks over 350 people. Why would anybody in the UN have to do that?
That is bizarre. I have no idea. I know she's claimed that somebody else was using her credentials or whatever. I guess we await the Inspector General's report on the FISA abuses to learn more about all of that. But the unmaskings and the FISA abuses ramped up 3 times their average in 2015 to 2016.
It seems to me like once Obama got elected, the floodgates opened. All the corruption just occurred. And really, to me, again, it started turning us into a banana republic. The United States started switching allegiance. We went against Israel. We went for Iran. It seems to me this sort of plays into the fact that as soon as Sessions recused himself, which I think is suspect to begin with, because all of a sudden, and this is Barack Obama's MO as well. Remember when he got elected senator, they unmasked some information about his opponent that was supposedly sealed. Well, this is sort of what happened with Jeff Sessions. I mean, okay, it was an honest mistake. He forgot he met with Kislyak at some dinner, which happens dozens of times a week in D.C. in the swamp. And so they used it when they needed to make him recuse himself. All of a sudden that came out. Just like Flynn, all of a sudden all this bad stuff about Flynn came out when they needed it. And Petraeus. But what happened was the second he recuses himself, boom, all of a sudden Mueller's in there. Almost like it was Rosenstein, rather, and Mueller. It's almost like this was planned. And as soon as they got all their ducks in a row, they went with it.
Well, I've said that for a long time. I mean, there's just too tight a time frame between Comey's firing and I think the New York Times publication of his memos leaked by his buddy Richmond happened within 6 or 7 days, and within less than 24 hours, Mueller, who had just interviewed for FBI director the day before the New York Times story, was special counsel the day after.
It just seems to me to be, it's like just as plain as the nose on Rod Rosenstein's face. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The thing is, this is so corrupt, and Mueller is contorting himself, trying to find anything he can against Trump when the stuff is right out there, and he was part of it with Uranium One and everything else with the Clinton Foundation. We only have about a minute left, Sidney Powell. The only thing that concerns me now, obviously, besides the election this coming November, and the House could flip with that, is the statute of limitations with the Clinton Foundation.
As much has been going on wrong there should be enough current events to prosecute criminal conduct, and the statute of limitations on some of the more egregious offenses, I think, are longer. So there should be plenty to work with.
Let's hope so.
Well, Sidney Powell.
Creepsonamission.com.
I love it.
Creepsonamission.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to go visit that website. I also encourage you to go purchase Sidney's book. And you can find that book at Licensed to Lie. If I did it, you should do it.
LicensedToLie.com. And on Twitter, her handle is at Sidney Powell 1. SIDNEY. 2 L's in Powell. At Sidney Powell 1. And Sidney, we always like to close the show with a quote. This one from the great wit and wisdom of Will Rogers. If you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging. And I'd say that kind of
gotta love it.
Fits this very perfectly.
Yep.
Sidney Powell, thanks so much for joining us as usual here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thank you all. It's always my pleasure.
And that wraps up another show, folks. Find us at cowboylogic.us, our network, talkamericaradio.us. We'll see you next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you check the website, talkamericaradio.us, you'll see all the other great shows we have. Have a great week, everybody. And hats off to all those who gave for us to continue our lifestyle here in the United States. This Memorial Day weekend just passed. We really do salute you all. And we will see you all next week, folks. In the meantime, God bless America.